Welcome to Living Out Loud with your host, Jess Phillips, where we talk all things addictions, codependency, relationships, and the good, bad, and ugly in between. Today, I want to talk a little bit about recovery, a little bit about sobriety, and also people who might not necessarily be struggling with addiction issues, but are just struggling with this overall sense of purposelessness, maybe a lack of joy, lack of happiness. I'm hearing a lot. Unfortunately, over the past 6 months, I've been watching a lot of people who once struggled with addiction, made a decision to become sober, go back out and start drinking or using drugs again. And, this is not a podcast episode to say that everybody should be sober and sobriety or abstinence is the only way to go. I've learned along the years that what may work for some may not work for others. Some people might be able to drink socially or recreationally use whatever it is they're choosing to use. I'm not one of them. I don't want to be one of them. And that's really what this episode is going to be about, is really this idea of picking a lane. It's something that I talk to clients often about. I feel like it's a very helpful tool to be able to set a focus for a little while and just stay in that lane and keep your eyes and mindset focused on that said goal. And we'll get into the specifics about what those goals can be. But in terms of what I've been observing in the recovery community is this almost sense of flip-flopping. And I know I make it sound a lot easier than what's really going on in the person's mind, because I know it goes a lot deeper than that. But this idea of making a decision and then undoing the decision. And that can happen in terms of sobriety. It can happen in relationships, jobs, you name it, the gym, our eating habits, right? I talk a lot about that. My personal experience with all or nothing behaviors. I'm really in it. I'm in it to win it, or I'm not in it at all, which never served me. It never developed good habits along the way. There wasn't very much consistency. And the bar ultimately was just set too high. I'm not sure. Well, that's a lie. I am sure I know where the perfectionistic mindset came from, but it's very much not helpful. I had to be the best, or if I was going to the gym, it was to become the thinnest. And then I would get super thin, and then what? Almost impossible to maintain, miserable to maintain, a lot of physical, mental, and emotional side effects from maintaining such a low weight. And then I'd swing in the opposite direction and put on too much weight for my body and what I'm comfortable with. Not that there's any type of magic number out there, but I just wasn't comfortable. I wasn't fit. I wasn't fast. I wasn't motivated, and just eating a ton of junk, So this idea of I'm in, I'm out, I'm in, I'm out, it's exhausting. I was speaking to somebody this morning who's quite new, getting back into his health journey, mentally, physically, and spiritually and emotionally. And we were talking about how difficult it is to stop something, say, for example, for 2 years, and then have to reclimb out of that hole, rather than stopping something for a week or 2 weeks or a month. Give yourself a month, right? Tragedies happen, things happen, breakups happen, broken hearts happen, broken bones happen. We're allowed to give ourselves the permission to pause, but we weren't talking about a pause this morning. We were talking about let's throw in the towel. And it's a really, really, really steep hole to climb out of after stopping whatever it was that you were doing for 2 years. And that's exactly what happened to me after my shoulder surgeries. It was literally almost 2 years of inactivity, a lot of foods that I don't normally eat, a lot of sitting. There wasn't very much exercise, maybe a few walks here and there. So to get back in the game after that much of a pause was, oof, it was, and thank God I have the muscle memory and the discipline already ingrained in me to do that. But I completely understand why or how somebody would say, like, this is just too big of a venture. It's too scary. I'm going to keep my head in the sand, and maybe not try, because sometimes not trying is more comfortable or seems more comfortable at the beginning than trying and failing. So all to say, this pick a lane and this idea of sticking with something, I think, is super important to talk about, because picking a lane and making a decision, and it doesn't have to mean that this decision becomes completely rigid and there's no flexibility or you lose all power of choice. We always have power of choice, right? I could decide today to go get a burger and a beer if I wanted to, right? It's not the lane that I'm in right now. That beer for me would do a lot more harm, and it wouldn't even come close to the pleasure and the joy and the life that I have built over the past 16 years. So it's just, for me, it's not worth it anymore. But nonetheless, I do have the choice. I can go and do that if I want to. I choose differently. And in that choice, I have opened certain doors, developed a routine, consistency. And I think those are some of the biggest markers, that I see lacking in the people that come to work with me, or a lot of people who are coming into recovery. The routine has been stripped from them. The sense of purpose, direction, their just sense of working towards something is gone. And I don't know if that's a pretty terrible feeling, to feel purposeless, when the days are just merging together. And you can see a lot of that in the corporate grind too. People just waking up, going to work, coming home exhausted, ordering food, watching TV, going to bed, waking up, rinse, repeat. And hey, if you love your job and you're implementing exercise and that's working for you, that's great. This is not to say that corporate positions are bad, but when we're not enjoying what we're doing and we're stuck in that cycle, sometimes too, a cycle of maybe overworking. I see it a lot in workaholics, right? Where their physical health, you're always paying a price for something. If I'm going to devote 60 hours to my work week, then some part of the rest of my life is for sure going to take a hit. And I don't know about anybody else, but when I stop physically working out or physically moving my body, it's only a matter of time before my mental health will start to deteriorate. Doesn't matter how much I like my job. If that part of my life is taking a hit, I'm not even going to show up as my best self at the job. So that's really what I've been seeing. It is really a lack of structure and routine, and ultimately making a decision. And when it comes to people speaking about a lack of a joy or happiness or direction in their life, it's really interesting how I think a lot of the times when we get ourselves into a large jackpot, or we've been feeling really depressed or down for a period of time, I think naturally our minds tell us, like, make this huge monumental shift in your life and get back on track and you'll be okay and everything will be better. And it's like, you actually don't need to do that. It can actually be the smallest change and the smallest, tiniest lane that we pick, because in choosing something, everything changes. I also see it a lot with relationships, right? Codependent relationships, abusive relationships, relationships we don't want to be in. I've done it personally, right? You're just stuck in this cycle of, I don't know why I'm staying with this person, but I just keep doing it. And then the moment we finally make that very, very, very difficult decision to leave, usually in a short amount of time, we're like, oh, this feels much better, right? It's staying in the indecisiveness that can really drive a person crazy. Too much flip-flopping, too many, touch and go. We got one foot in, we got one foot out, changing our minds a lot, right? Because we're emotional creatures, we're emotional beings. And if there's one thing that I know for sure, is that my life is a disaster when I make decisions based on my emotional state. Because that wasn't a very stable state for a long time. Thank God for today, it's a little bit more stable. But in the past, I never knew what mood I was going to wake up in. Sometimes I was so excited to the point where I felt almost manic. Oh, we're going to do all these big things and whatever it was. And then the next day could have been polar opposite, down in the dumps. What's the point? Really, really, really up and down. And then I would make decisions based on that. I remember calling in sick to work based on my emotions, ending relationships based on emotions, starting relationships based on emotions. How often do I hear that one? Oh, I'm bored, so I downloaded Tinder. That's a great reason to start a relationship. I'm bored. And how many times have I done it? I'm bored. I'm just going to swipe a bit, right? What is the intention that I have just set there? What is the time that I have taken to even explore? Am I ready to be in a relationship? Do I want to be in a relationship? What do I have to offer a relationship? Nah, I'm just bored. I'm going to swipe a bit. Also, a huge disrespect to other people's feelings, right? I didn't know or care really what anybody else wanted at the time. I just wanted attention. So this idea of really getting a little bit more clear about what we want, not dependent on our emotions. Is this something that I've wanted for a while? Is it something that I've been thinking about for a while? And I think everybody has those things at their core, right? I don't see a huge fluctuation in the topics and subjects that people come to me with to work on. Normally, if I were to boil it down, it's health and fitness. I'll throw weight in there as well. They want to look different. Relationships, codependency, choosing better partners for them, behaving differently in relationships, finances, their relationship to money, work, not being happy in their careers, wanting to change maybe how they show up in their careers, especially if they're in a higher position. So those are basically, it's like that kind of wheel of life, right? We're looking at our family life, our physical life, financial, spiritual, social. Maybe a person is coming out of state of, extreme isolation and loneliness has kicked in. Can be terrifying to make adult friendships. I hear that one a lot. So, and these changes are all good things, right? And some of them are a lot bigger than others. But again, it doesn't have to be this huge all or nothing change at the beginning. I was working with somebody a couple of weeks ago, and he came to me with quite a few things that he wanted to work on. And also this really underlying sense of just blasé, just not feeling himself, not motivated, not particularly happy, the days kind of just folding into one another. And I usually say the same thing, and my message doesn't really change all that much, is that happiness isn't coming and motivation isn't coming. As depressing as that sounds, it's not. We have to create it. We have to find out what it is that sparks our interest or joy. And it doesn't mean that we're going to be completely elated with whatever it is that we're starting or our new venture, but just trying something a little bit different can make all the difference when you're in one of those states. So we talked about getting back into this routine of exercising and eating differently. And he said to me, well, what about, my happiness, and what about all the other issues? And this is the most interesting part of picking a lane, is that sometimes when we take the focus off of those bigger issues, such as becoming happier, or maybe finding a relationship or the perfect job, sometimes when we just tweak our focus and concentrate on one thing, we get happier along the way. I don't know about any of you, but once a habit becomes a working part of your mind, and it isn't a muscle that you have to force yourself to develop, it just becomes almost like an automatic. So say, for example, I wake up in the morning and, none of us, well, maybe a special few, I don't know, sure as shit isn't me. But if you wake up and you're just not feeling great, you're just whatever, crabby, you're tired, I don't really leave much power of choice for me anymore. It's an automatic that I move my physical body, because I've proven to myself, just like I used to prove to myself, that drinking or drugs or cigarettes or shopping, whatever the list was at the time, would alleviate my mood. Now, those things, thank God, don't work for me anymore. And I'm glad that they don't. Well, maybe shopping sometimes. If any of my friends are listening to this, they know that. But this idea of physical movement, I don't have to debate anymore whether that lane is going to help me. It's just a lane that I have picked. So waking up, and sometimes I have the time to drive to the gym, and sometimes I roll out my yoga mat on the floor and just like get into it for an hour. And just the whole process of that lane requires so many things. So it requires me to get up, get dressed, put on workout clothes. Then it requires me to fill my water bottle. Then it requires me to put on my earphones. Well, it doesn't require me, but these are the steps that I take to do all these things. Then I've got music blasting in my ear. I turn my phone on silent so that I don't get disrupted during the workout. And then I go from a person who woke up lost in thought or listening too intently to their thoughts, a person who woke up maybe not in the best mood, and a person who is known to make emotional or impulsive decisions, has now kind of bypassed that. And now it's just me and the music and the weights and my mat. So I've just picked a lane for that morning, because I don't know anything worse than waking up and fighting with yourself. And I don't know about anybody else, but there can be a very large committee up there sometimes in the morning, right? God knows what those voices are telling me. Oh, it's fine. Just relax. You worked out yesterday. You ran yesterday. Oh, just chill. You're tired. You deserve to sit. Oh, so much effort to work out. I don't know what they're going to be saying. But because I've made the decision, I don't listen to them. And then once I'm actually moving my physical body, the beautiful part, and I think probably the part of it that I love most about physical activity, for me, I don't know if this happens for everybody, but my mind shuts off, or at least goes from 90% chatter to 30% chatter. It just quietens down a little bit, and I become connected to self. Because when I'm stuck in my head and stuck in my thoughts, disconnected from my body, I become a walking, talking head. And it usually doesn't lead me to great places. So all of a sudden now I'm on this mat and I'm working out, and the music's pumping me up. I love listening to music when I work out. God bless anybody who can work out and not listen to music. Sounds like torture to me. So the music's pumping me up. And then I get these beautiful natural endorphins. And that's a huge, huge, huge component of physical activity. Sometimes we're looking for happiness or motivation in all the wrong places. And as a society, we have slowed down a lot. We're sitting a lot. We're going through drive-throughs a lot. We're ordering a lot. I remember somebody told me during the pandemic that they ordered movie theater popcorn to their door. I think the movie theater was closed. I don't know if maybe they kept the restaurant open. I was like, call say popcorn to your door? Like, it's just, everything's just so different now and so readily accessible. And as convenient as it seems, it's actually pretty scary. I don't want things to be that readily available because then I become lazy. I used to love going to Blockbuster Friday night. It was so exciting. Go to Blockbuster, get a shit ton of candy, spend like 45 minutes with my best friend picking a movie, trying to see if anybody's returned the movie that I wanted already. How old do I sound right now? I never thought I was going to get old, and now I'm getting old. It's really weird. But it was just fun, and it required effort. Sometimes we would walk there, I don't know, go get ice cream at Baskin Robbins, walk home. It was just something to do, and it was an event. And now I sit here on my couch and I'm like, oh my God, I could just buy a movie right now that's currently in the movie theaters. It's just so accessible. And some people might love that, but I find it quite scary actually, because to me, it promotes isolation. The easier you make things for people, the more we're contributing to kind of each person fend for themselves, stay home, have things delivered to your door. And more that idea of community seems to be slipping away a little bit. And that's another very large topic that I talk about, and I can do a whole separate episode on the importance of community. And it being one of my top values is that we're better in numbers, especially people struggling with their mental health, emotional state. We're just better when we're together supporting each other. And this idea of just things being so accessible without even having to talk to anybody. You just punch in your credit card and your phone and things just show up at your door. And I'm not saying I don't order from Amazon or anything. I definitely do. But this idea of just getting out and getting together with people is slowly slipping away, and it is a little bit scary. Anyways, all to say is that in the morning, whether I'm at the gym or I'm working out on my floor, I have made at least one decision for my day. Now, is picking the lane of working out itself just the isolated activity? Is that going to change my life or my day? No. But what happens is that all the behaviors that come with it start to compound into a snowball effect. Just like bad habits usually lead to more bad habits, good habits usually lead to more good habits. So I finish the workout, I hop in the shower, I make my smoothie, and then even when I sit down at my computer, I'm in a different mood. I'm in a different state altogether than if I hadn't worked out. I'm more energetic. I'm 90% guaranteed to be in a better mood. I feel clearer. I feel sharper. I feel like I can better serve my clients. I sleep better that night. So all of these kind of subtopics and sub effects that small workout is having enables me along the way to just naturally become happier or feel more purposeful. And it's really interesting that sometimes, the smallest goal or the smallest decision can actually answer a lot of our questions. So this specific client that I was talking about, he did just that. He went back to the gym, he changed his eating habits, and little by slowly, the attention goes from being stuck in our minds, thinking about ourselves, thinking about what we don't have, to getting very busy, either achieving something that we do want, or even just busy, doing whatever it takes to keep up that lifestyle. For example, food prep. Somebody made a comment on my lunch, I think it was a couple of weeks ago, saying like, oof, that looks like a lot of effort, and I kind of looked down at my lunch, and to me, it's second nature to cook like that and to eat like that. First of all, I have an air fryer. I should probably become a spokesperson for air fryers because I tell everybody about them. And for people who don't have a lot of time, they're amazing. You literally throw anything in there and it cooks it to perfection in literally under 15 minutes. So I was looking down at this lunch, but then I also thought to myself, okay, yeah, maybe I'm prepping food more often than other people, but the result of not doing it costs way more than doing it. Because if I don't do it, then I'm eating garbage. And when I'm eating garbage, my mood is garbage. I get lazy. I get tired. My sleep is disrupted. I'm probably not working out as often. So even just that lane that I picked to dedicate to prepping my food and bringing fresh food to work with me, even that in itself has so many extra benefits that it's just worth it to stay on that, to stay on that path, because when I don't do it, it's almost like it's a bit torturous for me. I don't like to feel hungry. I get hangry. And the food that I take time to prep in the morning just makes me feel good, and it makes me a better employee, makes me better at my job. I feel more positive. And when I don't do that, I really can go down in the dumps pretty quickly. I talk a lot about that, right? The effects of sugar and processed carbohydrates that have on my body. Forget the weight. It attacks my mental health way more than, I mean, yeah, sure, the weight can be an issue, but how I feel mentally is not great when I eat that food. So, all to say, just this idea of choosing something, however small, make the decision and see where it takes you. The other day I was thinking to myself, I don't like doing ab workouts. Some people love it. I hate it. And I said to myself, I wonder what would happen if I did 100 sit-ups a day. And it was just this very interesting thought of like, yeah, just a small decision like that could, who knows? Maybe I could motivate someone else to do it, or maybe it could start some type of a chain effect, or maybe my core would end up being so strong after 3 months and then alleviate some of my back issues, and that would help in a certain way. But just these small, tiny changes, it's just interesting what can come of that. So I started off by talking about recovery and people struggling with alcoholism and drug addiction. Also very important to talk about what lane people need to pick, at least for a little while. I often talk about there's probably nothing more healing than a period of abstinence from whatever it is you are struggling with, or you want to maybe consider stopping or quit. Because say, for example, you want to stop, I don't know, eating as much sugar. If you keep eating sugar every 2 or 3 days, it's going to be really difficult to gain some clarity around what's happening when you eat the sugar. Ultimately, the physiological effects of you now having an addictive substance in your body that's telling you that you need to eat more sugar now. If I want to stop drinking beer and I have a beer, I have 5 beers every third day, it's going to be really difficult. So this period of abstinence required from whatever your vice is at the moment is also picking a lane in your own way. Whatever you decide to do with that going forward is your business. But ultimately, I think a decision has to be made in the beginning to just get clear, and also to reintroduce who you are to yourself and others without that substance for a little while. Because there is a lot of things, especially alcohol and drugs, that can alter your state of being, make you behave differently in all areas of your life. You respond differently, you react differently. And this idea of being able to address any of that is very difficult when you're under the influence. And it saddens me and also humbles me to know how insidious our egos can be, in telling us, like, you got this, you can handle this now. I remember at around 10 years of recovery, when I moved to Toronto, my first thought was like, oh, I could probably drink here. I could be like a classy version of myself and drink at some of the fancier clubs and bars that they have here, and really reintroduce myself. What a lie. You know what I mean? What a lie. Yes, I teach behavior change. I believe in behavior change, but at a fundamental core level, and I've said this before and I've gotten slack for it before, and that's okay, I don't believe people change all that much. I'm still very much the same Jess as I was when I was 15 or 25 or 35, and I'm not going to dare ever say 40. I'm going to stay in my 30s forever. I'm the same girl. I'm just a better version of myself. But at the end of the day, how very quickly could I revert back to old behavior, old coping mechanisms, character defects, as people in the recovery community like to call it. So this idea of being 10 years away from a substance doesn't enable me to ultimately change how I drank before. It just gave me an opportunity to recreate a new life sober. And the only way to maintain that sober life for me, might be different for other people, but for me, is to stay in my lane of recovery. And as sad and heartbreaking as it is, it's also a gift to watch other people drink who drank the same way as I did, and then come back and say, like, oh, don't do that. It's not any different. I can't tell you how many people I've heard that from, is I thought I was going to drink differently because I'm a different person now and I've grown so much and my life is so big, or I'm a family man or woman now, whatever it is. But ultimately, I don't know how much that changes. I never wanted to drink one glass of wine. I never understood, what's the point? Why don't you just give me a Diet Coke? I don't want one. I want 11. I want to get knocked out by the booze. I don't want to just kind of sip on it. And I don't think that would be any different for me with 10 years of recovery. Anyways, all to say is that the lane that I have chosen to pick, especially in terms of my sobriety, has turned into so many different avenues and awarded me so many different opportunities than it would have if I had flip-flopped into two lanes, right? I watch a lot of people come in and out and in and out, and they're sober for a period of time, and then they start drinking again. And it just, at the end of the day, if your soul and your gut is telling you, I don't think you can drink safely, or I don't think that you're very happy when you do X, Y, or Z, I just encourage you to listen to that. I remember I used to be the queen of listening to other people's opinions. I would ask 10 people's opinions on one problem. What do you think I should do? Do you think I'm an alcoholic? Do you think I should stop this? Do you think I should block this person? Do you think whatever? And at the end of the day, I already had my answers. And I truly believe that almost, I would say all of us do. There's just a lot clouding it. There's a lot of debris. There's a lot of opinions. But at the end of the day, if your body keeps telling you, like, oh, why did you party again? Or why did you binge eat again? Or why did you gamble again? You know you shouldn't be gambling. That's something inside of you telling you, like, maybe it's time. Maybe it's time to pick a lane. But I think the trickiest thing about the lane is that it's not pleasurable at the beginning. I think that's probably the hardest thing about all of this, actually, is this idea of like, okay, fine, I'm going to put this down, but I sure as shit better get happy or it better pay off right away. And it's not like I don't want to be the bearer of bad news or anything, but it doesn't pay off right away. It's actually in some of those difficult times in the beginning, in the rebuild, in the discipline, in the climb, whatever you want to call it, in the development of responsibility comes the self-esteem. Forget the happiness. Happiness, I don't even know what that word means anymore. Comes the self-esteem, right? Esteemable acts. When we've gone from doing the next wrong thing for however long to switching to doing the next right thing, A, it feels wildly uncomfortable. B, it feels really boring. And C, there's no immediate, right? Especially if you struggle with addiction issues, excuse me, there's no immediate payoff or result. And I don't know about any of you guys, but I wanted instant results. Another very tricky thing about the fitness industry or getting fit, right? How many people have said to me, like, I've been giving it my all for 3 months and I don't have my dream body. I'm like, well, it's going to take a lot longer than that. You know, think about how long we haven't been living in our dream body or been eating a certain way or not exercising, right? Say it's 5 years, 10 years, 20 years we've been living like that. It's almost self-sabotage in a way, or egotism or whatever it is, to think that we're going to undo that in such a short amount of time, where it takes consistency and it takes a long time. And I think by also too getting a little bit more realistic about how long some things can take, and it's not to discourage anyone or to depress anyone, but if I know something is going to take a year, then I know it. If I want to fool myself and say it's going to take 3 months, I'm going to be gravely disappointed after the 3 months. And then what's going to happen? When I'm disappointed, I tend to quit things. So if the marker's a year, then okay, let's do it. Head down, power through. You know, I know for a fact of this all or nothing, stop and start, you know, starve myself, binge back and forth. I know how long it takes to get fit again. And it takes about a year of consistent work. And that might sound really shocking to some people, but to me, it's actually a really positive thing, because now I get to pick a lane for a year. Now I get to get up and go because I have a desired goal. Now I'm working towards something and my focus is on something. And when my focus is on something, I'm not that focused on maybe things I shouldn't be focused on. I'm not so worried about what other people are doing. I'm not trying to control, or, you know, we hear this a lot in relationships, hyper focused on our partners, right? The focus is back on me and my lane and what I'm doing. And in that comes, you know, so many cool opportunities, like working out with friends, running. You guys have all seen, you know, my my couch to 10K, which was hard. It was really hard, you know what I mean? And I think too, I think one gift of having a very what's an appropriate word to use for my dear father? Let's call him a realist. a prickly realist who's very supportive. I love him to death, but he'll always tell you the truth and he won't sugarcoat it, and I knew what I was getting into with the running. And I also know to be able to become a runner, you have to run often, like all the time. It's like golf. Like you stop playing, you suck again when you start. You have to play consistently. You have to run consistently. And it was embarrassing. It was embarrassing. I was out there. I was like, oh my God, I just felt so clunky and heavy. And then I'd watch these people pass me and I'm like, holy shit, how fast are you? Like I thought I was going fast and then they would blow past me and I'd be like, oh my God, that's brutal hit to the ego, but little by slowly you keep doing something. I think a lot of people have this idea of experts or these super talented people are so far out of reach from us, and they're not. They're just very consistent. They're very consistent in their behavior, in their goal settings, and they don't stop. And that was a beautiful one for me because it actually, especially because I'm quite public about all of my ventures, so many people started to reach out. I have one woman who I talk with now on social media, and she's running too. And she always comments on my runs and I comment on her runs. And we weren't really that connected before. And it just brought this sense of community. When I did go to run the 10K, I ran into an old friend and now I've chatted with him a few times since and seen him around. His family was there. It was beautiful. My parents were there. It just builds communities in certain ways that had I had not picked that lane, I'd be sitting on my couch instead of out there running. And if there's one way I know how not to build a community, it's sitting on my couch. And then the longer I do that, the worse I feel, the sorrier I feel for myself, blah, 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 right? That snowball effect. So all to say, whether it's sobriety, whether it's alcohol, drugs, cigarettes. Cigarettes is a brutal one, It's a really, really hard one. And if there's one method that I know does not work with quitting cigarettes is a harm reduction approach, which somebody very close in my life continues to do. And she's like, well, I just had a puff and I know what's coming, right? And there's no judgment, but it hurts because I worry. And, I know what one puff leads to. It leads to another puff and then leads to another cigarette. And then if you were a smoker like me, it leads to a pack, right? So, and I say the same thing to her. You got to pick a lane. You either smoke or you don't. Sometimes the answer is just so simple and I want it to be more complicated. And I also too, I have to know what's coming. It's going to hurt. Quitting smoking hurts. It's terrible, especially the older that you get and the longer that you've been smoking. It's awful. It's like an exorcism that happens. You're stripping this highly addictive toxin from your body, and it's awful, but it doesn't last. You're going to get through it. Whether it takes, 21 days to kick a habit, they say, fine, a month, you're going to feel like shit and you're going to chew everybody's head off and things are going to be awful. Okay. Know that going in, but caving and having a puff or having a cigarette every 3 days isn't going to help you get any closer to the goal of stopping. So whether it's booze, drugs, cigarettes, sugar, highly toxic relationships, that's another big one. That's another big one where I had to learn that one the hard way. Going back to someone isn't good for you for whatever reason. They could be a lovely person, but they're just not the person for you, is also wildly painful because you're not picking a lane. It's confusing for yourself. It's confusing for the other person. You say one thing one day and then 3 days later you're saying another thing and the flip flop happens, right? So even taking an abstinence-based approach for a while, I'm not saying forever, for everybody has to do what's right for them, but that period of separation, that period of space, saying, I'm going to make this decision and I'm going to honor this decision in whatever way possible moving forward is super important. because especially just like quitting smoking, my mind at the beginning, especially if it's been really used to something, right? Say it's a 5-year relationship and all of a sudden you're trying to break up. It's very normal that you would go back or you would want to go back. That's 5 years with somebody. That's a lot of emotional intimacy. Even if it's chaotic or not, it's still 5 years of your life. Whether it's 5 years of not working out and then you start working out, that's the lane that you pick. Your body is going to tell you sit on that couch and rest because that's what it's used to doing. So not only picking a lane, but really like let's challenge our expectations of the lane being pleasant, because it's not. And that shouldn't deter you from doing it anyways, because if it didn't become pleasant, nobody would do it. Everybody would just stick to their vices, right? It's like people who quit smoking. If it stayed completely intolerable to not smoke, then everybody would be smoking. But there is a hump that everybody gets over. For myself, I can't even smell cigarette smoke. I've become one of those, like, I look at people when they're smoking, or if I smell it, and like the look on my face, I can't stand it. It's disgusting to me. But before, I loved it. I was a smoker. I loved it. It was great. But then I got to this point where it's like, yeah, no, I don't want that, peace of mind. I feel very peaceful. I think of the past and toxic relationships or chaotic relationships. And I'm like, oof, it was so hard to pull away for some of those. Some of them for 6 months, I was twisting over the person and wanting them back and having to talk to people and crying and thinking I'm never going to get over them. And now I'm over the hump. And now I think like, ooh, what was I thinking? I don't want to feel like that anymore. Nothing against them. I just don't want to feel that way anymore. Same thing with not being fit. Not being fit for me is very uncomfortable. I don't like the feeling of it, but for a while it was easier for me to just order food and not work out. And getting through that hump of going to the gym, especially when you feel out of shape, you feel maybe a bit heavier and you're pulling on your clothes and you're comparing yourself to everybody. Oh, it's a shit feeling, But again, there's a hump. Now I go to the gym, I feel confident. I know what I'm doing. I belong there. Well, everybody belongs there, but you probably feel like you don't when you're just starting. And now it's not a big deal anymore. So, think about it. Think about that lane, that you have been maybe debating for a long time. Maybe something in your heart or your gut is telling you, I should be over there, but I don't know how to get there. I should be over there, but I keep staying over here and I don't know why, right? These are all very common, very normal thoughts and experiences, especially when it's almost like somebody's taking a blankie away from a baby or a toy. Don't take my toy away. It's very comfortable, and then you take it away and now it's like, shit, I need to do something different. And sometimes people just want to keep their head in the sand because the thought of doing something different is so much scarier. But I'm here to say I have tried a lot of different things and pushed myself through a lot of uncomfortable situations, and I just feel way better on the other side. So if you have any lanes to pick, feel free to message me. Tell me what they are. Tell me if you're stuck. Tell me your plan to get there, and we'll talk more about it. Thank you for listening. I love you guys.
Listening and supporting Living Out Loud. Be sure to tune in next week for another fun, juicy episode.